Welcome to Chapter 4 in our video series. This chapter is going to cover backcountry food, a favorite topic for many people out in the backcountry, especially out for an extended time, myself included. And why is that? Because food is fuel. It powers you up the steep hills, it gets you over the pass, and gets you to that great campsite you've been thinking about weeks before. The longer you're out there, the more you're going to crave it. Now, packing backcountry food is more than just grabbing some spam, grabbing some beans, and throwing in your pack and calling it good. No, you want to keep three things in mind when getting food for the backcountry. Is it nutritious? I love chocolate, but I can't live it on just for 5 days alone as much as it pains me. You want a variety. Does it have enough caloric density? In other words, how many calories per ounce does it have? Apples are very tasty and make a good treat on the first day on the trail. But you don't want to carry 10 pounds of apples only. You're not going to have enough calories per pound to get you through those other obstacles I talked about. And your packs can be very heavy and very bulky. Finally, taste. There's a lot of these, what I call sawdust bars or energy bars is the more polite term. But they don't taste very good. As I say, they taste like sawdust. I'll make all kinds of claims, but if they're not very tasty, especially in day 5 when you had 50 of these, you're not going to like it too much. So you want to make sure you have some food you're going to enjoy in the long run. And we're also going to look at different ways of getting food and preparing it. Those pouch meals you get in many popular outdoor stores, they can be convenient, but the longer you're out there, a lot of times there's not enough food, and they become somewhat expensive, and frankly, the taste is eh. So we'll look at some grocery store options. It's amazing the amount of backpacking food you can get from a grocery store that's nutritious, full of calories, and very tasty. And we'll look at different ways of preparing it too and give you some basic recipes. And also we'll look at something else that's very important as well, the type of trip you're on. Are you on a group trip where you're splitting up meals? What kind of recipes will work better for that and make it easier to split up the food? Are you doing a desert trip? We want some food that'll do well in the desert heat or won't require as much water to cook. So we'll look at those different options as well. Basically, at the end of this video, you'll have a much better idea of the type of food to take for your backcountry goals and how it'll work for you. And ultimately, hopefully make some meals you look forward to at the end of the day and not something just to endure. So with no further ado, let us go look at the different food options for backpacking. One question beginner backpackers tend to have is how much food to pack and what kind of food to pack. We'll go a little deeper detail for lunch and breakfast and snacks and dinners as far as specifics of the food. But for now, a high level overview is probably good to have. Now, how many calories a day is going to depend on the weather, the person themselves, how fit they are, how much they weigh, and other factors such as miles per day and even the steepness of the terrain. But assuming a moderate 10-mile day with about 2,000 or 3,000 feet elevation gain, a fit 115-pound person will have about 2,000 calories a day they need to retain their weight. On the other hand, a 150-pound person needs about 3,000 calories a day, and a 160-pound person about 4,000 calories a day. To figure out the amount of calories you should take with the food, aiming for 100 calories an ounce is a pretty good factor to go for. Some will say 125 or even 150, but I find 100 calories an ounce is just an easy figure to keep in mind. Now, you can't just go by calories. You need a good ratio of carbs to fats to proteins. Otherwise, you could just drink olive oil and call it good. Not going to work. What many people seem to agree upon in studying nutrition science as it applies to backpacking is a rough ratio. 40% of your calories come from carbohydrates, 40% of your calories come from fat, about 20% of your calories from protein. This is just a rough ratio, and on a weekend or even a 4 or 5 day trip, it doesn't matter as much. But the longer you go out, the more you should pay attention to this ratio. The main thing, though, is have some hearty food, dense in calories that you enjoy. If you actually enjoy the food, you're going to keep your energy level up and generally have a good time. You don't want all chocolate, you don't want all chips, you don't want all hunks of pepperoni. But keeping a good ratio of all these different types of food mixed in together will work really well to keep you out backpacking and have a good time.
When I do breakfast on the trail, I like to keep it simple. Now, you can go very simple and buy those freeze-dried pouches for breakfast I mentioned earlier, something with eggs and peppers in it or omelet in a bag. And those can be tasty and very convenient, but they tend to be on the more expensive side, especially if you're out for 5 days or more at a time. Some people get their favorite freeze-dried meal in a bulk can. Now that's not a bad idea to go, especially if you're splitting amongst a group. Buy one of those cans, dole it out in Ziploc bags, and everyone can have one of those meals on the trail. And they're not terribly expensive if you buy them in bulk like that. But personally, I like to keep my breakfast meal simple, and I never get tired of these meals. I like oatmeal, and not the instant oatmeal, but something like quick oats or even old-fashioned oats, along with milk powder, some nuts, some dried fruit, and sometimes even a scoop of protein powder for a little bit of an added oomph. Now, oatmeal, you don't have to boil it all the way, just with some hot water, and eating kind of chunky works pretty fine. Not everyone can do that, and I realize that. Another go-to that I enjoy is granola. Add the same basic ingredients of dried fruit, nuts, perhaps some chia seeds, again some protein powder, and some dried milk. And what's nice about that, you can eat it cold for a quick breakfast, or you can eat it hot, and it's still very tasty. I never get tired of these two basic meals. And I find, especially the protein powder, it's very satisfying. It's inexpensive overall, and it gives me enough calories to power me up the trail for the morning. Throw in some coffee or hot chocolate. It's a pretty good breakfast. There's some other recipes for some fancier breakfasts that some links. A friend of mine in particular has a free cookbook with lots of varieties you can try. But that's probably better if you want to experiment. When you're first starting out, keep it simple. But again, something you want to enjoy. And I find these basic type of breakfasts work really well for you to try. Give it a whirl, and I think you'll like it. There are two schools of thought for breakfast. Some people like to keep it very, very simple and just have a granola bar or something similar, eat, walk down the trail, then have a bigger meal. Others enjoy having a meal in camp, then starting the day. I think a lot of it depends upon what kind of trip it is, the mood of the party, etc. I find a lot of times it's a lot nicer just to get up and go, hike half an hour, warm up a bit after having a quick snack, of course, to start, and then find a nice sunny spot. You're already all packed up, the blood's moving, then have something to eat. Other people enjoy the experience of having a meal in camp, sipping that morning hot drink, looking at the sun over the lake, and having a leisurely breakfast. Neither one is necessarily incorrect. You just have to find a rhythm that works for you. Now, a lot of it depends upon the type of trip too. Personally, when I'm doing longer hikes, I do enjoy having that quick granola bar, hiking half an hour or even an hour down the trail, and then having a breakfast. However, when it's a more social trip, or I'm just doing a more relaxing trip, I do enjoy that leisurely breakfast in camp and that hot beverage. It's a nice thing. So when you're thinking of having breakfast, decide what kind of a trip you want. Or even if it's too cold out, sometimes it's better just to get moving first, then enjoying the breakfast once you warm up. Again, once you're in a sunny area. So there's no right or wrong way of doing it. It's just something to think about. Though I use the term lunch for this portion of the video, it's really a term of convenience. What I'm actually doing all day is grazing. Having a bunch of small snacks throughout the day to keep my energy level up. I find if I have one big meal around noon or so, I don't have the energy I need. Furthermore, I tend to be tired afterwards and don't want to hike because I did have a big meal. What I'll typically do is keep some snacks handy in a cargo pocket or in a hip belt pocket that's available in my pack. The snacks I have handy tend to be trail mix, also known as gorp, which is nuts and dried fruit and sometimes some simple chocolate like M&Ms. This provides both some protein to sustain me during the day as well as some quick sugar to keep me going. Some dried fruit and nuts separately also work very well. Another thing I like is the salty snacks. When you're sweating all day, especially in some hotter weather, you need to keep the salt levels up. So some simple salty snacks will do the job, and it's very tasty. Your body will crave salt, and I find I enjoy it quite a bit. It helps balance out the sweets a lot of us tend to pack when backpacking. Speaking of sweets, I'm not a huge fan of the bars, but I do appreciate the quick energy they give in a convenient form. I don't bother with the more expensive bars you might find in outdoor stores or similar areas. I prefer off-the-shelf items from a grocery store. Chocolate bars, granola bars, fig bars, even some grocery store protein bars if I need a little extra protein. Now, I do like a nice break that's a little longer during the day sometimes, in which case I'll pack something more substantial. Some hard salami or tuna packets and tortilla wraps, which stay long very well in a pack, and some cheese. Both tortillas and cheese are very shelf stable, and I find a hard cheese such as sharp cheddar does really well, but even some string cheese, individual packs will last fairly long in a pack. And if you're vegetarian, some peanut butter works a good substitute. It's shelf stable and it gives you a lot of protein, and it's very yummy too. These are some of the basic things I do for lunch. And again, most of it's just from a grocery store. Don't have to get too fancy. And I find I enjoy the food all day while hiking, and that's a very important thing. Backpacking is the meal many people look forward to the most in the backcountry. You've walked all day, you're tired, and you're hungry. But then you have this nice, scrumptious meal that refuels you. Then you get excited and rested for the following day. It's a very good thing. One of the most popular meals of this type are the pouch meals I mentioned earlier. They can be tasty, but as I said, they're somewhat expensive, and too many of them add to a lot of bulk in your pack. A nice compromise is get the number 10 cans, buy the food in bulk, and make up your own pouch meals in the quantities you want. What I prefer doing, though, is making up my own backpacking meals with some fairly simple ingredients. I always start with a carbohydrate base. Ramen is a classic that can go with many different meals. Couscous is something I personally like because it cooks very quickly, along with instant mashed potatoes. Macaroni and cheese is another classic. Can get a little gloppy, especially when you cook at elevation, but it's something I always found yummy, especially combined with such other products as tuna or a chicken pouch. Add some of my own cheese powder sometimes, or some milk powder and butter powder for some protein. Some dehydrated beans also work well, especially the couscous or even the mashed potatoes. Another option, especially if you're a vegetarian, is to buy some TVP, or textured vegetable protein. Gives you a little bit of protein in your meal, obviously. Now, some of these ingredients are found easier online than your local grocery store or even food co-op, but still some nice options to use, even if you do have to buy them online. Going with that is the number 10 can of the freeze-dried chicken or similar. It's a good ingredient to add to your own meals, and buying in bulk, it's not terribly expensive. Now, I did mention online. As one thing to buy online to add some nutrition and variety to your meals are dehydrated vegetables. Such things as corn or broccoli or even red bell peppers add a nice bit of taste to some backpacking meals, again, as well as giving you some nutrition they otherwise wouldn't get in the backcountry easily. Sometimes food co-ops will sell this, but I found these type of ingredients are found easier online. One thing many food co-ops do sell in some grocery stores are many pre-made soup mixes and chilies and other similar things. Some great meals that aren't expensive and can add some variety to your backcountry meals without going too far out of your way to make them. Put them in a Ziploc bag as needed. You have some great meals for the backcountry. Dinner doesn't have to be terribly fancy or expensive. Just with some basic ingredients, you can make some tasty meals you'll enjoy in the backcountry. Eat some dinner in the backcountry, rest up, and you'll enjoy the following day. It's a good thing. Besides lunch, dinner, and breakfast, there's some other things you can bring that have a touch of luxury to your trips. Instant pudding or cheesecake mix is an easy to make treat. Just add it to a Ziploc bag, perhaps add some whole milk powder, and it makes a yummy dessert that's easy to pack. Pack some of your favorite candies, perhaps, which also makes a nice dessert and gives you a little bit of energy while you're hiking. But my personal favorite to bring are the hot drinks. You can bring some morning coffee, some hot chai or hot chocolate, or some herbal tea. One of the best luxuries of backpacking is simply enjoying the silence in the woods in the wilderness while having a hot drink while overlooking the landscape in front of you. It's a simple pleasure, but an excellent one. Preparing the meals and cooking depends a lot upon the group dynamics and what kind of trip you're taking and personal preference. If you're doing one of the freeze-dried meals in a pouch, pretty straightforward. You simply heat up 2 cups of water, dump in the pouch, and wait 10 minutes. But you're kind of limiting yourself to very specific meals, and again, as I said before, it is expensive and not always the best solution. What you should do, in my opinion, is sort out all your food in Ziploc bags, especially if you're making your own meals, be it your lunches, your breakfasts, your dinners, rather than one big bag of stuff. Organization makes for more efficiency in the backcountry and gives you an easier time, so you're doing less futzing around and simply cooking your food. Now, you cook your food, you have a couple of different options. Some people, especially for more boil intense meals like macaroni and cheese, will cook directly in their cook pot. Some people do what's called freezer bag cooking, whether again the bulk freeze-dried food or some other homemade meals like couscous and vegetables, will add hot water right to the freezer bag and eat out of the freezer bag. Makes for a no muss, no fuss type of situation and can be an ideal meal depending on what the meal is. Now, another option that's really good for desert hiking or where water is scarce or even hot water, or if you just want simplicity, is eating cold. Having some salami and cheese and tortillas and some dried fruit makes a pretty satisfying meal. It's a little heavier than traditional meals, and some people like the psychological boost of a hot meal, but it's an option to keep in mind. Give it a try sometime, see if it works for you. Another and less popular option is using an empty gelato jar to add your rehydrated beans and such, and just add the water ahead of time and walk with it. When by the time you get to camp, the meal is completely rehydrated. Some people eat it cold just like that, so they call it cold soaking, or you can heat it up easier in your cook pot. These are just some different options you can do while cooking and preparing for a meal. It's pretty simple overall, but once you have this information, you can make your own decisions as appropriate.
And this concludes our video on backcountry cuisine. After watching this video, you probably have a better idea of what kind of food will work for you in a backcountry setting. Eating well in the backcountry doesn't have to be difficult. Just a few basic ingredients, you can have a memorable meal while looking at some great scenery. Until next time, buon appetito.